So just to prove my point. And again, if you could please remain on mute unless you've got a question or presenting. That'll be great. So for the purposes of the recording, welcome again. Thank you very much for coming along to this, the 2023 RYA Scotland Annual General Meeting with a strong agenda. With no further ado, we will start. So we'll start with our first agenda, which is apologies. So Pauline, apologies, there we are. So we've got apologies from Gordon Daly, Duncan, David Phillips and Mark Turner. Is there anyone requiring to submit any other apologies? Okay, no more heard, which is fine. We'll move on. So minutes of the annual general meeting from 2022 have been circulated in advance. Not aware of any corrections that have been submitted in advance. Is there any corrections people would wish to see in the minutes from 2022's AGM?
Brian, just one change, just to take Stuart off the attendance list, Stuart Ainsley. But he's on the apologies list, but it's just to remove him from the attendance list.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Anybody else? Okay, and in that case, could I have someone to propose and someone else to second the minutes from the 2022 annual general meeting? So I've got so Charles and Ben. Okay, so Charles and Ben, thank you very much. I want to move on to matters arising. Scan the minutes. I think there's two areas somewhat related to matters arising. First, around representation of commercial centres. So back in last AGM, there was conversations there about restarting the coaching committee. So just as a reminder for members, that as a governance model is a three-legged stool of staff, board and committee. And actually, when the coaching side didn't have a functioning committee. So we made a commitment to restart that committee. This is the area of RYA Scotland that is responsible for centres, commercial, club and voluntary. So I think it's the best home for that place. Work has been ongoing in establishing that committee. We have now a terms of reference, and we've agreed that initially that committee will be chaired by Jack Mitchell from our board, who has responsibility for coaching. And we're shortly going to start recruitment for this committee. The membership of that is made up of instructors, SIs, coaches, trainers. So these are the members most closely associated with training centres, both commercial, club and voluntary, as I've already noted. I think also it's worth noting that in our current board, 2 members of the board are actively working at commercial centres. So there's direct representation, and there are others who have held roles or been involved in the operation of running a training centres. So continue to keep an eye on this. I'm particularly excited to see this coaching committee, or actually it's going to be called the Coaching Collective, because partly committees too stayed. We want a younger audience. So we've gone with a cool phrase, Coaching Collective. And my hope and aspiration is that bringing that together will give centres a representative voice within the organisation. The other matter arising was a delay to qualifications. So again, this was something that we at RYA Scotland and I personally escalated with the RYA chair. He was also present at our last AGM and heard some of the feedback. This was continued to be pursued with Chris and the manager responsible. for that area of work down in RYA Hamble. Effectively, the last update I've got now is that they've been improving since our last AGM to today, where today the turnaround time is sort of an average 1 to 2 days and not the weeks, 4 to 5 weeks as it was back then. So vast improvement. That's mainly due to having a fully staffed team in Hamble. I thought it would be useful actually, because it was a metric I saw, but that team so far to the end of July has processed 38,200 certificates and ICCs. It's not a small amount of work that's actually getting processed down there. So my, again, hope is that centres and other users are seeing a significant improvement in this area. Certainly my sense check with some within this area, within some of the centres, is that that has improved. And so hopefully members are happy with that. That is matters arising that I could come across. If we're okay with that, I will move on to give the chair's report. Now, I'm slightly worried where that photograph came from. Just about managing a smile, but not quite. So start the report. Organisation is in good health. I think it's fair to say it's not been plain sailing all the way, but we've come together and we finished the year back to full staff complement, or very shortly will be fully staffed and ready for our next year. The remainder of the board and some of the staff will give a full report on activity later in the agenda. However, I just got a couple of updates that I would like to pass from the chair's perspective. I think critically for the organisation this past year saw us recruit a replacement CEO. We had a strong selection of applicants, which I took great comfort from, and we finally whittled those down and got to our preferred candidate. So Finlo, who's on the call, joined us in May of this year, coming from the Scottish Association of Marine Science, who's a professor in oceanography with a focus on the Arctic. He's also past Commodore at Oban Sailing Club and continues to be deputy coxswain at Oban Lifeboat. Now, when I was looking for a new CEO, we were looking for someone who could look after the team and drive the organisation forward. So 6 months in, and I'm more certain every day that we've made the right decision. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to meet Finlo. He has been out and about at a number of events. If not, you'll hear from him shortly, so that's fine. But for now, Finlo, thanks for all that you've brought in the short time that you've been with us, and look forward to what you'll continue to bring to the organisation, certainly working for me, so appreciate that. Talking of thanks, I also just want to use this opportunity to a thanks to James Stewart, who was working as our interim CEO. I think at the last AGM, James had just stepped in to help steady the ship. So James did a lot of good work to steady the organisation and keep the business running while we were recruiting Finlo and making sure that Finlo had the space when he came in to settle into his new role and find his stride. So again, my thanks to James Stewart for his time doing that. It may interest members to actually know that he's helping RYA Cymru Wales in a similar role, and so the RYA continues to benefit from his input. One of my roles, another role, is ensuring that our partnerships are strong. We cannot, by our nature, survive on our own. And one of these relationships is obviously the relationship with RYA Hamble. The staff teams are very well connected to the respective functions in Hamble. And I thank all those folks in Hamble for being welcoming, for sharing, for listening and supporting. I would say clearly it's a two-way path as well, because I know for sure that they appreciate the input from our staff team as well. At a higher level, they continue to have regular meetings with Chris Preston, the chair, and as a result of those meetings, also have regular meetings with RYA policy forming committees. And just noticing that Chris's tenure is up in less than 2 weeks, so the RYA AGM, and Michael will be taking over as the new chair. And Michael's indicated that these conversations and meeting structures will continue. So I'm quite pleased to see that. I think they've been very useful for everybody, not just us. Typically find if we raise issues there that these are also issues that you'll find in other parts of the country, whether that's Northern Ireland or Wales or in one of the English regions. So these are good, effective opportunities to share information, knowledge, and really effect change as well. The relationship between RYA Scotland and RYA has been strong since before becoming the chair, thanks to the efforts of Ewan. I think Ewan's on the call. In fact, not just to the RYA, but obviously the relationships with Wales and Northern Ireland. So just delighted to attend the Home Countries Conference last week with Finlow, which is the first time since 2019, when this was hosted by Scotland. And again, the sort of recurring theme from that is we have far more in common than separates us, but working together, we will be stronger. Again, members may be interested to note that not all national governing bodies have such strong relationships with their English brackets UK counterparts. And so I regularly hear how we are the envy of other sports. Another key relationship is Sport Scotland. And again, this relationship continues to be strong. A good example of this was support provided by Sport Scotland to augment staff and the performance team late last year and early into this year. And so again, publicly thanking John Lunn, Abby Hewitt, and Charlotte McBeef, who's on the call in that regard. Again, Sport Scotland organised a number of opportunities from chairs from different sports to come together. And again, we tend to find we have way more in common than separates us. Great opportunity for me to learn from others and to also share from my and our experiences. A good skipper would always keep a weather eye. I don't know if I am a good skipper or not, that's for someone else to decide. But I think in this point, just would like to point out a couple of storm cells that I can see in the distance. I think it's not fair to always present the positive, to present a balanced view. The last AGM I talked about sort of safeguarding, and if it doesn't look right, then to challenge it. We ultimately, as members of the organisation, are the custodians of this. So again, I would ask you to look at that, but also extend that into the sort of equality, diversity and inclusion lens as well. There's perhaps coming towards this concept of being safe, safe to be who you are, to do your sport the way you want, and just to feel safe. And so I think that's a good lens to use. And if it doesn't feel safe, it's probably not right. So it is a risk to the organisation, and my ask is you would, let's say, as members and as custodians of our organisation, help us with that. The second one I want to call out is just on funding. Continue to see pressure on the Scottish Government funding, and hopefully not foreshadowing us, but certainly I know RYA Cymru Wales have seen significant funding cuts of late. So again, what can we do? We need to focus on being a well-run organisation, so we're doing that as best we can, and evidencing the positive impact from our sport to funders. Specifically, you can ask club members by helping to complete things like surveys and other activities like that. But it's certainly something we will keep our eye on, I think. Okay, I'm going to wrap up with just a few more thanks. So thanks to all the volunteers and our clubs up and down the country. Our sport would not be where it is without you doing all that work in the clubs. I want to thank the volunteers within RYA Scotland. Again, we just wouldn't be able to operate without you. So thank you tremendously for that. To all the instructors, coaches, SIs, trainers, thank you for enabling the education within our sport. Your enthusiasm, dedication and skill is to be commended. And to those of you who run a training centre, a huge thanks for being part of the family and all you do for our support in its adoption and individual participants' progression. A final thanks to the RYA Scotland staff team. I'm so proud to have such a great team working to further our aims, and appreciate all the efforts that go in. Ultimately, if you contribute to our sport in any way, it's a huge thanks from me and I'm sure all our members. And that's the chair's update. Going to move on, and we've got Honourary Secretary Katie. So over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many people here tonight for this meeting. It's been another busy year, and I wanted to focus my report this year on some of the things we've been doing in terms of our board recruitment and governance, because I think it's an important aspect in terms of how we are running and developing, I think, our organisation. This year, we saw a number of directors who had 3-year terms, which is the initial term of appointment under our Articles of Association, coming to an end. And so this left a number of gaps on our board for volunteer directors to be filled. And that allowed the board to prioritise recruitment of volunteer directors in areas where we were able to identify that it would be beneficial to the organisation to broaden and enhance the knowledge and the experience that people can bring to our leadership team. So in line with our governance processes, the roles are always publicly advertised for an open recruitment programme. And that happened in the early part of this year. There was a very healthy level of interest, with many more applications for our volunteer vacancies than there were on the board itself. And we really extend our thanks to everyone who applied, because an organisation like the RYA in Scotland really depends not just on its staff, but on all the volunteers who give their time willingly and without question to support us, to help at events, and to spread the word to other people about sailing and why it's such a great sport. So the Appointments Committee was pleased to report that there were new appointments as follows. Hamish Mackay was welcomed back. Former chair of RYA Scotland is now in the role of performance director on our board. Jack Mitchell, again, another well-known person in our community, was also welcomed onto the board as coaching and training director. Neil MacDonald, who I think many people may know but has spent a long time abroad, is back in Scotland and welcomed as a participation and development director, also with additional skills and knowledge in business and sustainability. Ben Kemp, again, I think another well-known person in the East Coast, was appointed for governance and equality, diversity and inclusion. And slightly later on in the year, just with timings, we were delighted to welcome Yasmin Price as youth director to fill the vacancy that was left by Jordan McNeilish, becoming too old to hold that post, and he has stayed on the board for another term as youth progression director. So I hope that you'll be able to see from these appointments that everyone has considerable experience and lots to lend in their respective areas. And we took this refresh as an opportunity also to review and improve the management of our board meetings, how we were running those, to allow increased focus on strategic and operational priorities. And that's been really great to work on that with Finlo, who, as our new chief executive, obviously was also appointed as one of the new board members this year when he joined. Now, in March this year, I was delighted to attend the Affiliated Clubs conference in Perth, which was a day-long conference full of information and learning for resources for how RYA Scotland supports clubs across Scotland. It was also a great opportunity for people to share experiences and talk about common issues and challenges that exist in many clubs within Scotland. Coming back to the question of our board and our vacancies, there is, I'm sorry to say, but with many thanks, the forthcoming planned retirement of David Phillips, who is our Cruising and General Purposes Director on the board. We will shortly be advertising a vacancy for his replacement following his retirement, and he goes with our very warm wishes and many, many thanks. Picking up on Brian's mention of the coaching collective, he's already explained the establishment of this committee, and I'm delighted to see that the vacancies for people who want to volunteer to join that vacancy, that committee are already advertised, and how to apply is on our vacancies page on the website. So please do have a look if that's of interest to you. We also very shortly will be welcoming more volunteers if they're happy and willing to join Participation and Development Committee, the Performance Committee, and also the Cruising and General Purposes Committee. And I know you're going to hear from Hamish and from Neil and from Charles tonight about the work of these committees. And I would ask you, if you're interested and you think you can put your shoulder to the wheel and lend some experience and knowledge, please do think about volunteering for these committees, because the opportunities are there, and we'd be delighted to have more people join them. Finally, I'd just like to thank everyone for their hard work this year in all of the changes that we've had on the board. It's never an easy time when good people are leaving and they leave a great gap, but I think we've made great appointments. I'm very excited about working with all of our appointees in the future. And I do encourage, again, anyone who's interested, please do speak to anyone on the board if you're interested in a position or in volunteering, because we're very happy to share insights about what being a volunteer or board member involves. Thanks very much. And I think I am passing on now to Adam.
Thanks, Katie. So good evening, everyone. So honorary Treasurer's report. Hopefully people had a chance to see the accounts that were circulated before the meeting. So those are the accounts for the 12 months to the 31st of March 2013. They've been reviewed by our external accounting firm and have been approved by the board. And I guess kind of three things to sort of note within there. I mean, there's always quite a lot of detail, but three things I'd call out. So one is we made a loss in the year, slightly, well, quite a bit more than we budgeted for, 61k loss. We'd actually budgeted for a small loss, and that's really driven down to a one-off event with some changes in the team and the related actions to it. I guess it's kind of key to just kind of reassure our members that this isn't an ongoing activity, and it's an isolated item, and we won't see an enduring impact in kind of future years. So that's kind of the sort of the profit and loss side. The second thing to highlight is the sort of the balance sheet. So quite large cash and creditor balances at the end of the year. And this we see quite often each year. And it relates to the timing of payments to Hamble, reimbursing them for the salary payments they make through the year on their behalf. And they often ask us to delay making that payment with their agreement. So, you know, for people who looked at the accounts, they look like quite large balances, but, you know, relate to that one transaction. So hopefully easily understood. And then probably the most important thing within the accounts is the reserves. So obviously in a year where you do make a loss and have a deficit, then you see a reduction in reserves. So reserve standard 225k, obviously down, as you say, from prior year, but that's still a kind of healthy level for an organisation our side, and it's above the level that we are sort of required to hold, only just, but above the level required to hold within our policy. So still overall kind of in a healthy position there. And then one final slide from myself. So I think we sort of show this slide most years, just shows, gives a feel really for where the income and the funding comes from. As you can see, similar to previous years, Sport Scotland being you know, the largest funder to the organisation by some way, then followed by the RYA down south, and then kind of some information about where we spend the money and where it goes. Staff costs, and this year had a number of subcontractors helping us out through the sort of the transitions that Brian was talking about. So that's still, you know, 2/3 of where our money goes and where the spending is. And then I think the other thing just to kind of note on this slide, slightly higher proportion of leadership and support cost, and that's because that's where that one-off event and that one-off cost was recorded within the accounts when you compare that to, say, previous years. So I think just a kind of short update for myself. Summarize, it's been a sort of fairly challenging year from a finance point of view, but overall we're in a healthy position from a reserves, and those challenges are a one-off event, and we won't see them flowing into future years. So we get into those future years with a good level of confidence, and that's it from me.
Okay, thanks, Adam. So we're going to cover off the office bearers. Katie's sort of giving a quick rundown, but maybe, Katie, if I can throw it back to you and we'll just run through that.
Sure, that's fine. Thanks, Brian. Yes, item 7, just for the meeting to note the continuation of office for office bearers. In the last year, Brian Wilson as the chairperson, vice chairperson Hannah Earl Payne, honorary secretary Katie Wedderburn, honorary treasurer Adam Dernley, youth progression director Jordan McNeilage, communications director Stuart Ainsley, subcommittee cruising and general purposes David Phillips. And then I would ask the meeting to note as item number 8 the new appointments, as I've already covered in my report, but just for completion. New appointments of Director for Governance, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, Ben Kemp. Director, Coaching and Training, Jack Mitchell. Subcommittee Performance, Hamish Mackay. Subcommittee Participation and Development, Neil MacDonald. Director and Chief Executive Officer, Finlo Cotier. And the Youth Under 25 Director, Yasmin Price. Thanks, Brian.
Okay, so that's our continuing board. So point 9 on the agenda is auditors, or I should say examiners, not actually audited, but examiners of our accounts. It is worth just a little bit of pre-say this because it's something a little odd that members are not required to approve the accounts. That's the responsibility of the board. but in our articles they are required to approve appointment of the examiners. So a proposal from the board is to continue with Gakin and Co Chartered Accountants. Could I ask for a member to propose and someone else to second that decision, please? It's I've got Ben and Charlie, but there may be others. It's worth perhaps just if we are voting, I think that's us voted out anyway. Actually, we're done. So we'll take Ben and Charlie, the two I can see. That's all that's required. Worth saying, you could come off mute potentially as well because I can't see everybody at the one time. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Gaken's will be continued. So we're on to the board and staff updates. And we're going to start with Hannah, our Vice Chair. Hannah, over to you.
Thanks for that, Brian. So I've been serving now as Vice Chair for a little over 2 years. And as I reflect on my involvement in board-related activities and discussions and things over the past year, then I can't help feel a blend of excitement and enthusiasm, a touch of frustration, and also a little bit of a drive to overcome some of the challenges. During this last period, I've had the privilege of representing RYA Scotland at various events, including the West Highland Yachting Week in August. And it was genuinely amazing to witness such a diverse range of participants, spanning from a 9-month-old baby up to an 85-year-old man, all actively immersed in the world of sailing. However, it did leave me pondering the number of participants who were actually RYA members, and it did ignite my curiosity about how we can promote a more diverse membership in line with our people, places and community strategy. In the past year, myself, I've also deepened my involvement with my local sailing club, donning various different hats as the Commodore's wife, whether that's running the bar or manning a safety boat or managing the social media. It's been quite an adventure. Witnessing people enjoying their time on the water, actively participating in club activities and acquiring new skills has been truly heartening. And it's also cast a little bit of a spotlight on the challenges faced by clubs, including the need for more volunteers, increased participation, and sustainable and inclusive development. And I'm really glad to see so much good work from staff who are focused on these areas. In my own day job, I've been deeply involved in the management and operation of our family-owned RYA training centre in Oban. And just like many other centres, we've experienced a robust increase in our customer base over the past year. However, our aspirations, as they probably are in others, for further growth have been a little bit constrained due to the challenge of finding high quality instructors, assessors, and examiners at a time that we need them. And I'm really glad that the coaching collective is on its way. And this is one of the areas that they're going to be focusing on. One of the highlights for me for the year was being part of the interview panels for both the CEO and new board member recruitment processes. And I firmly believe that these roles have injected RYA Scotland with a very rich blend of skills and knowledge, making the board exceptionally well equipped to steer the strategy and development of RYA Scotland into the future. And while the board is fueled by renewed energy, it does remain really crucial that we maintain a deep understanding of the challenges faced by our members. We must establish effective communication channels to ensure that the member voice is not only heard, but actively valued. RYA Scotland should continue to serve as a bridge between our members and the wider RYA, addressing pressing challenges faced by clubs and centres in Scotland, who often have really quite distinct needs compared to their counterparts on the south coast of England. Now, my role as Vice Chair is really a role of support to the Chair, my fellow board members, and of course our dedicated staff team. And I sincerely hope that in the year coming, that the board and staff really take the opportunity to utilise the skills, knowledge and experience of myself and all of the other board members to advance the work of RYA Scotland for the benefit of its members. So thank you. I believe I'm now due to pass over to Ben.
Thank you, Hannah. Good evening, everybody. I'm Ben. It's a privilege to have joined the board of RYA Scotland a few months ago, earlier this year. Just a very little about me. I've been a keen sailor since I was a child. I dinghy sailed all my life, including now at my local club in North Berwick. I'm also a keen yachtsman and have a proud owner of a vintage Nicholson 32 on the west coast of Scotland, and enjoy sailing that with my family. In terms of my board role, I have a particular brief in relation to governance, as Katie said earlier. And whilst this may not be to everybody's taste in terms of the most exciting item on the menu, it is, and particularly when we're all keen to talk about sailing and boating, it is, of course, the critical thing which enables the organisation to operate effectively. It's the framework that enables us as the board, enables the staff and everybody involved in RYA Scotland to work effectively as an organisation, to do all the good things that you're hearing about, and to overcome the challenges with effective decision making. So that's the underpin, and why we're serious about making sure we continue to review and modernise our governance to ensure that we are consistent with best practice. I'm going to not talk in great detail about this, but I'm going to refer on the next slide, please, Pauline, just to some recent experience where RYA Scotland is subject to audit, which is commissioned by Sport Scotland. You've already heard about Sport Scotland and their critical importance to us as a key stakeholder and funder. As with other governance bodies in Scotland, we're subject to periodic audit, and most recently undertaken by the accountancy and audit firm KPMG. Most recently, the most recent report finalised just a month or two ago this year. Pleased to say that the overall rating was from the KPMG audit was satisfactory, with some comments and recommendations, and just set out there for you a brief summary of the findings. A number of areas of good practice specifically identified. Or you've already heard about the recruitment for board positions, and the auditors commented on the positively on the way in which they had been widely and openly advertised. Some positive comment about our work around equality, diversity and inclusion, particularly the recognition you'll see there. And you can read more about that, of course, in our strategy as well. Comment on, they really look quite thoroughly at all aspects of the way in which the organisation operates and its effectiveness, and that includes some positive comment around induction processes and also the transition to remote working and the paperless office. It's obvious challenges that many organisations have experienced, particularly post-COVID, but some good positive endorsement of the way in which we had done that. Some areas for improvement and further work, and you'll see that almost all of these have been addressed. One of the things that we've been working on, and Finlo in particular and his team have been working on, is to make sure that these were addressed promptly, really around some of our policies and procedures, updating our conflicts of interest policy guidance, making sure terms of reference were appropriately updated and comprehensive. Finance manual updated, again, that has been signed off by the board now. Some of the processes, including staff expenses, were efficient and operating well and in a timely fashion. Some of our HR processes, role descriptions, and a bit about our risk register, which is something that the board has been particularly focused on, making sure that we are focused on the right risks at the right level, and operating efficiently, so that we can make sure that we are channeling our resource in the most effective way. I will pause there in relation to that. There's none of these things were thought to be particularly material in themselves, but nonetheless important, and we've been working hard to address them. The only other matter I note there at the bottom, you've already heard about the relationship, the very positive relationship with RYA Hamble, and great to see a new memorandum of understanding which the board has engaged with, and Finlo and his team have been working hard on. That's recently concluded and signed, and sets the basis, the framework for our ongoing relationship with RYA Hamble, and indeed with Wales and Northern Ireland as well. And with that, I think that's the sort of formal governance update. If I can pass to Charles, I think.
Thank you very much. I'm Charlie Bird. I'm the chair of the Cruising and General Purposes Committee. I'd like to say thank you very much to Finlo, who has been on the scene since May. I'm enormously grateful to him for all sorts of things, but probably one of the most grateful things I'm for is that he wasn't coxswain of the lifeboat that towed me back into Kerala Marina earlier this year, when I broke down with 11 of my family, plus 2 dogs, one of which was on heat on board. So thank you for staying put at home, Finlay. It was embarrassing enough already without seeing your happy, smiling, cheering face on the bridge. By now, we all know what the Romans did for us. But sometimes I'm challenged, particularly if I'm wearing an item of clothing with RYA Scotland insignia on what RYA Scotland has ever done for the average boater. It's relatively easy to list, to mix metaphors, the bits of the iceberg above the water: the training courses, provision of instructors, organising clubs, encouraging young people to get afloat. But it's often the activities you can't see which work to the benefit of the wider boating community, whether they're members of the RYA or not. And many of these activities fall under the purview of the Cruising and General Purposes Committee. The clue's in the name. We're a team of volunteers, many with relevant professional qualifications and or experience of working or playing in the marine sector. Because we want to reflect the concerns of our members and prospective members, one of the key aspects of our work is hanging around in marina, club and harbour bars, talking, but more importantly, listening to boaters. We're fortunate to cover most of Scotland's waters, and every member of the committee is tasked to feed in what they're hearing over the year, and this is reflected in some of the agenda items for the meetings. The increasing costs of visitor berths and moorings, the difficulty of obtaining red diesel in some areas, unmarked creels and floating lines, the unreliability of weather apps, issues with transiting the canals, and the price of beer in the marina bars. We can't, of course, solve all such problems, but where possible, we can raise them with the relevant organisations with the full weight of RYA Scotland behind us. And despite what some might think, it is a considerable weight. RYA Scotland has worked hard to be one of the organisations regularly consulted by the Scottish Government, statutory authorities, private industry and industry bodies to contribute advice, opinion and expertise, particularly on environmental and planning issues. And all these things funneled through the Cruising and General Purposes Committee. We're fortunate to have Graham Russell, our Planning and Environment Officer, on the committee. In a brief chat yesterday, I asked him if he could name a few of the organisations with whom he has regular dealings. And without drawing breath, he listed Nature Scotland, Clyde Marine Planning Partnership, Loch Rann Safety Forum, the Scottish Government, various statutory harbour authorities, Crown Estates, the National Access Forum, the Marine Directorate, the RYA and RYA Northern Ireland. Through him, the committee is also involved with planning applications for offshore industrial wind turbines. Having been brought up in the rural countryside, I can tell you quite categorically that they are not farms. Fish farms and areas for seaweed cultivation. Graham also reminded me that in practice, as well as theory, we cover the 200-mile limit, and therefore we get involved in oil platform decommissioning. The purpose of all this work is to encourage the spread of sustainability and environmental best practice, as well as ensuring that developments, whether on the shoreline or offshore, do not impede the safe navigation of our members. I should add at this point that the committee also maintains a network of coast watchers who cover the Scottish coast and islands and who alert us to and are consulted on planning applications that might impinge on recreational boating in their area. An extension of this aspect of our work is the fact that we represent RYA Scotland on a number of bodies working in the leisure and marine sector, both governmental, such as a cross-party group on recreational boating and marine tourism, and representational bodies such as Scottish Waterways for All and the Lowland Canal Users Group. We're careful not to be seen as a lobbying organisation, but we also work closely with others, such as Marine Scotland, the Cruising Association, Clyde Moorings Committee, Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park Authority, because our members boat on inland waterways too, let's forget, on issues where collective wisdom and muscle are required. Three such issues which are occupying us at this moment are the Scottish Government's draft visitor levy bill, which, as it stands, would require all mariners, harbours and community organisations that provide boaters with moorings or berths to charge them an overnight levy, whether there was anyone on board or not, or whether the vessel could actually accommodate people overnight. In other countries, this is called a visitor's tax. In theory, the levy would apply to a vessel's annual berthing charge. The second area of concern is the increasing difficulty in navigating the lowland canals because of weed, overhanging branches and silt. Not only does this mean that canal boaters can't cruise the full extent of the canals, for which they're paying, of course, but the seagoing vessels can't transit them from end to end. There are also other issues with closures on the Crinan and Caledonian canals, which we and others are discussing with Scottish Canals to resolve to the benefit of the users. The third issue that is bubbling away is that of the future of Oban Bay. Depending on how the question of the harbour authority is resolved, there may be adverse implications for recreational boaters and mariners using that particular crossroads to the west coast and the islands. We don't, of course, operate independently. We work closely with Finlo, our CEO, and the board. It's a two-way flow. We're tasked by them, and we also advise them, particularly holding their collective toes to the fire on sustainability issues. And talking of toes, we keep one in the slightly warmer but infinitely more crowded waters of the Hamble, as I also sit on the RYA's External Affairs and Cruising Committee to ensure that we all know what we're all doing. To finish, I'm at present reviewing the terms of reference of the Cruising and General Purposes Committee. One of my aims is to expand the profile, inclusivity and diversity of membership, not only of the committee, but also of the RYA. Marooned in Kerra as I was with Dieselbug, I watch the ebb and flow of boats from all around Europe, many of the crews and skippers of whom, many of whom were young and in amazingly tatty but seaworthy boats. I'd love to see that reflected in our membership. That's the RYA membership, not the committee membership. As far as the committee is concerned, I'd be hugely grateful if you might consider joining yourself or spreading the word. I feel as though it should be some sort of reverse auction. Anybody over 60? 50? 40? 30? Sold. Thank you very much.
Charles, thank you very much for giving everybody an insight into the activities of the Cruising and General Purpose Committee and making sure we all have the freedom to enjoy the waters all around Scotland. And that really does take a lot of effort. And thank you to all of the volunteers also on that committee. Joining the board, I've been given the remit, or I've accepted the remit of participation and development. So Pauline, if you go to the next slide, please. And the main aim of that is to make sure that we have more people actively involved in the sport in all areas of the sport and all over Scotland, so that we, more people are benefiting from that freedom. And the team picture shows 1,000 words, better than 1,000 words. We have 3 regional leaders, Laura, Brian and Rhys, who look after their respective territories, to get out and about and on an almost daily basis, visit, listen, learn and support all the communities across Scotland. And they are ably led by Lisa and supported with the admin from Nassif, who most recently joined the team. And the types of things they're doing is to reduce real barriers and perceived barriers of those who want to join the sport through increasing the avenues with sailability, with onboard, etc. And you can see on the right-hand side there the huge number of events, which is a tip of the iceberg again of what they've been doing to encourage and promote the sport on so many different ways. So whilst that's the executives, the team who are doing this day to day, if you go to the next slide, please. Like the other areas of the sport, there's a main committee who works with it, and that's run by Neil Baird. And I would, like the others, I would appeal for more volunteers to join that committee so that we have representation both age-wise, geographically, and from the type of sport that the way that you participate in the sport, so that we do have that communication from you, the wider audience, the participants in the sport, about what you need from RYA, and you can help us to be more effective in the things that we're planning to do. Central to that feedback also is the Connected Conference, and key is in the name there. It's not just a clubs conference. This is open to all affiliated organisations, and it was held last year, first one after COVID, and another one will be taking place in the Dewar Centre in Perth in early March next year. And what I would ask is those of you who are members of clubs and associations, including commercial organisations, please make sure that your organisation is considering attending this, considering being represented at it, and also to give us inputs to make sure that the programme we have on the day is relevant to you, is answering some of your questions or debating the topics in which you have the greatest concern. We are, with the club census, we're seeing that there is a reasonably good overall participation level, but active participation is also very, very important. So please, think if you can volunteer some of your time to join the Participation and Development Committee, and if you can make sure that your organisation is represented at the Connected Conference, that would be very, very welcomed. Diversity of all types and angles, including tatty people with tatty boats, because quite often they sail the most and have the most fun. Very welcomed. And but what a huge strength is youth programmes and how we engage with those who are younger than myself, which is the majority of the population. So I'm going to hand over at this point to the youth leaders, to Jordan in particular, to discuss what they're doing for us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Neil, for that update on participation and development. Hi, everyone. My name's Jordan McNeilange. I'm the Progression Director here at RYA Scotland. Some of you may have known me from AGMs past. And as Katie alluded to earlier on, I'm now too old for my youth director role that I originally came on board with. Have it noted that it's only by a year, but a year nonetheless. And as I kind of reflected, like most this year on the year that's been previous, some of my highlights were kind of towards the end of last, beginning of this year, particularly down at the Glenmore Lodge for the conference on the Orkney Island Games, which is a wonderful thing that we're looking to build and develop there with another conference set on the island for November of this year, and looking at the kind of youth involvement that will happen at that event. From there, we kind of went on the hunt for a new under 25 director, and I was pretty pleased to be a part of that process and get involved in that and see the real draw of talent that we have out there among the young people in our sports, and we settled on Yasmin, who is going to be an exciting and a great addition to the board and to the team. And I'll take the opportunity to let Yasmin introduce herself, and then we're handing over to Jack.
Hi there. I'm really excited to be appointed as the Youth Director under 25s on RYA Scotland, and I'm really looking forward to getting my opinion heard and helping change the young person's development within.
Good evening, all. So I'm Jack. I'm responsible for the coaching and training part of RYA Scotland. First, I'd like to thank you all for a warm welcome in certainly coming back in supporting RYA Scotland on its endeavours. The aim and function of the coach education world is really, it's the foundations of our sport in terms of enabling that next generation, that connection in, and the future of your journey through our sport. So their mandate really connects into every pie of our organisation. And in doing that, I view it as one of the key parts in any sport is looking at how our people develop, and then in that sense, how we develop our coaches and in our world, instructors to support that people development. So a really key area of business. So what's happened since 2022 to now? I'd like to report that we have just, I suppose, reformed the staff team. The photos and the people won't look any different, but during the last 12 months, they have been elsewhere in the organisation supporting that change. But it's really useful to have our three key person back. So starting at the bottom is Robin Nichol, our Coach Education Development Manager. We have our Training Development Officer, which is Robin Phillips, and of course Gail as the administrator and supporting the team doing that. So it's really great news that they are back and leading the way forward. As you've heard, we have built the coaching collective, the coaching committee that is going to shape the governance of this department, and we're really excited for that to be out there in the public. And I urge you all not only to apply and get involved, but also to promote it as far and wide, because the success to that is a diverse set of people engaging in the coaching education development strategy and supporting that system. There's been much more happening across the scope with On Board, with Aspire training programs, and if you've connected and involved in those, they are absolutely kicking off, and the hard work of the two Robins to keep that going. So looking forward, what's really important is there's some really focus on female coach education work, and there's going to be a all new female tutors course coming up with female tutors course coming up very soon, I think in November. We've had many regional training days, and they've scaled up the delivery of that, and that is a true connection point for each region to connect into the coach education team, but also for that us to connect into that community and ensure we are pushing those training days. So again, it's an ask. Please share them as wide as you can. If you've been on them, please send some feedback into the team, because that enables us to keep the system turning and moving. Finally, the next steps moving forward. A youth coaching program that is a support mechanism set up across the two kind of functional delivery arms, and really excited to see how that develops. So please watch your space on this one. I've already mentioned the female race tutors program, coaching collective, and of course very soon our training advertisement dates will be coming in. I'd like to wrap up my very short piece really by coming back to where I started, which was the coach education department is that enabling partner and foundation for our sport. So if you're not a coach or instructor, or your club is looking for coaches and instructors, please engage with the team below, and they have the knowledge and the connections to be able to help with that. I'd like to hand on to Hamish. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jack. Good evening, everybody. So Hamish Mackay came back on the board in May, as was said earlier. Been away for about 10 years, actually, or more. So delighted to be back. I was watching, although I was away. And it's actually really nice to see some familiar faces and see the good work that's gone on over the last decade or more with the organisation and how it's evolved. But this is not, neither of these photographs are of me. I'm actually really pleased that we can showcase two of our former Scottish squad sailors, Anna Burnett in the NACRA 17 and Finn Sterrett in the 49er, and both of these sailors have qualified for next year's Olympics, which they're not in our programme any longer, but it's where they started. You know, Anna was originally from Helensburgh, as many of you will know. She was brought up sailing Optimists at Royal Northern and getting involved in the RYA training programme for many years, moving through the pathway. It's now her second Olympics, and she had a silver medal at Tokyo. And then Finn, originally from Kingusie, 49er sailor, now originally started sailing at Lochmorlich in toppers, and worked through our junior and youth pathway, and he's qualified for his first Olympics. So both a real inspiration, I hope, for our younger sailors. And actually, I'd really like to call out Rory McKenna as well, who was fourth at the Sailing World Championships at The Hague in the Hansa class. I think Rory might actually be on the call. And he followed that up last week, I think, with a third at the World Championship. So another inspirational performance. But the matters of the performance committee, I did write actually some of this down, so forgive me for reading it, but we could spend an evening talking about the performance activity. So the performance committee is chaired by Duncan Hepplewhite, and the committee really supports the coaches and staff delivering a full programme for our youth and junior sailors. So at a local level, our academy programme delivered across 6 classes, hosted by 13 different clubs around Scotland. The performance team programme delivered across 7 classes, using Blair Varick as our main base, and we had over 40 weekends of performance training. We hosted a successful youth and junior championships at Lochtummel in late June, and we've supported class associations to run training in the lead up to their UK national championships with the Optimist, Topper and 29er classes. And we've provided coach support at UK national championships for sailors in the Optimist, Topper, Ilka, or Laser, as I still refer to it, and 29er, to really maximise their learning at these events. We had sailors competing at the Optimist Europeans, the Topper Worlds, the Ilka Under-21 Europeans, Techno Worlds, IQ Foil Youth Euros and Worlds, and 29er Worlds. So great attendance from our youth and junior sailors. And last month, RYA Scotland ran what we described as the Giant Academy at Largs, where we had 85 sailors, and we've had some really, really positive feedback as to the success of that event. So we've got a full winter programme planned for our junior and youth sailors, with a great list of events and activities taking place throughout the course of the winter into the spring, and obviously the competition season next year. But we do have a common theme across our sailors, and that is that performance really starts at participation. We generally don't start racing. We start by going sailing, and that's why the work that you heard about earlier from Neil is really so instrumental to the success of the performance programme. We need more lookouts across Scottish club scene. Seeking out new young talent. They're maybe not even racing yet, but which would be a call to me would be, is there a way that we can channel this next set of sailors into our system and see if they can become Anna and Finn in the future. And we need volunteers. There was an ask earlier. If you would like to join the performance committee and you have an area of expertise, we'd be delighted to hear from you. And please approach the office if that's an area that you'd like to support. But finally, I'd like to thank the performance programme coaches, the committee, and most importantly, the RYA staff for their continued commitment, the drive, energy, and enthusiasm to deliver the programme, which ultimately enhances the skills and opportunities of our young sailors. Hopefully they get to follow in the footsteps of Anna and Finn and those that have gone before them and become an inspiration for the next generation, really. I'll stop there in the interest of time, and I'll hand to Stuart. Thank you.
Good evening, and thanks, Hamish. 12 months of marketing communications in 5 minutes. Well, when it comes to communications, digital and engagement, it feels like being on the water is increasingly normal again. As a result, the way that RYA Scotland communicates has been more focused, and we are seeing improvement in engagement as a direct result. Our membership and marketing manager left the organisation just prior to this year in review. Mark Turner, who's been with us since 2016, is our communications and engagement manager. And during the year to date, Mark has managed a department of 1. So I'd just like to thank him for his ongoing and quite incredible support. Communication is a big subject because it's a reflection of an entire organisation, both internal and towards the external and wider world. So the topics which follow will report RYA Scotland's involvement within the wider RYA family and within the community at large. What are the headlines? The RYA Scotland Impact Report launch, our Impact Awards, significant events attendance, improved RYA family communications, RYA Together on Water plus brand refresh, more general internal communications and external communications. I'll try and do a couple of seconds on each. The RYA Scotland Impact Report was launched over the summer. This follows on from our own strategic plan in 2022, and our CEO, Finn Lowe, will cover this in more detail next. The Impact Awards. In June, we launched the Impact Awards to coincide with National Volunteers Week. These awards recognise the contributions by people towards our shared sports. We were thrilled by the number of nominations, and I think you'll agree the breadth of stories we told were both heartwarming and impactful. They're on a majority of our comms, but the best place if you're interested is probably to look on YouTube. Events attendance. We attended a host of events, both in support of them and in creating content across key themes. RYA Scotland provided coverage at Finn and Foyle and RS200 Nationals. We're currently reviewing our event strategy, building upon what we learned this year. The RYA family communications, which has been mentioned a couple of times, so forgive me. We've seen greatly improved links with RYA. A particular highlight this year was bringing videographers to Scotland. It can be easy to fall into siloed thinking when reporting on RYA Scotland. The truth is that resources and people power within RYA are essential to our ability to communicate. RYA Scotland communications are also of interest to RYA members who are domiciled outside of Scotland, and this obviously is true in reverse. As part of the digital team, our communications and engagement manager attends monthly meetings with the RYA digital teams. This is in addition to regular weekly comms. The seat at the table provides us with a voice in UK-wide matters and ensures that we are up to date with things coming down the line. Our comms manager has also built ties with other home countries, recently updating event collateral with the new RYA brand identity, which serves all 3 home countries. Together on Water and the brand refresh. The RYA launched Together on Water during the summer alongside a refreshed brand identity. Finlo will talk about the RYA strategy shortly. The refreshed RYA brand identity impacts all of us. To ensure our voice as one RYA, our comms effort revolved around managing RYA Scotland messages in a coordinated way. We've been rolling out the updated RYA brand world across our own materials, and this is an ongoing exercise. Excuse me, sorry. Internal communications. Communications played a large part in the recruitment process for new people right across RYA Scotland. RYA support, HR, and others was vital to us. And where necessary, the RYA Scotland Communications and Event Manager was also an interview panel member. General external communications are about informing, inspiring, and investigating. In order to join the dots between the many faces who make up the boating community in Scotland, we've deployed a journalistic approach. It can be easy to focus on the average member of an organisation, but by investigating and reporting on small stories and passionate individuals, we're beginning to paint a broader picture of Scotland's people, places, and communities. We hope this shall encourage both existing water users and potential newcomers to see themselves within our sport. So what's next? We were thrilled to appoint a communications engagement officer in September. This new staff member shall start during November of this year and shall considerably bolster communications capacity for the next year. It's vital that we continue to improve communications with our members, our volunteers, and our stakeholders. And so we can't wait to see and communicate with even more of you out on or adjacent to the water. Thank you, and over to the new CEO, Finlo.
Thanks, Stuart. I've just been sitting listening to the contributions for the last 40 minutes or so, and I can't believe I get to lead this organisation. It's absolutely fantastic. So I've got the privilege of closing up this part of the AGM, and it's also an opportunity to acknowledge all the excellent and creative work that the RYA Scotland staff team, the volunteers and the members have achieved over the last year. I think if you just move to the next slide, please, Lisa, thanks. So many of the examples of what we've heard today have highlighted where our community is making such a difference, and that's really important. You know, we have to make a difference. We can't just exist for our own good. We have to make a difference out there, and these were included in the impact report for the first year of our People, Places and Communities strategy. This evening, we've heard from a number of core areas of the organisation, but I'd like to just highlight two of the underpinning strands that we have within our activity and that are highlighted in our impact reports. And these are sustainability and equality, diversity and inclusion, as you know, often referred to as EDI. So I think RYA Scotland was probably among the first sport governing bodies to adopt a sustainability action plan. And I'd like to recognise the energy and influence of Graham Russell in this area particularly. So sustainability covers a swath of activity from making our events plastic free to becoming more aware of our carbon footprint, the promotion of alternative low carbon fuels, and supporting clubs following recent storm damage just last week, and what future mitigations for those clubs might look like. So involved in the sort of very much the here and now, but also looking forward to the future as well. And much of this is done also under the framework of the Green Blue, which many of you will be aware it's an RYA-led initiative to promote sustainable boating for cleaner, healthier waters. So we're very active in promoting the Green Blue as a framework for the way that we go about our boating. And EDI is also absolutely key to all of what we're doing. We're fortunate to have Ben Kemp as a new director with responsibility for EDI. And I think over the next little while, we'll be looking to refresh and re-energise our EDI strategy. There will be support from Sport Scotland. They have a new scheme, which is promoting inclusion in sport and being rolled out across all the governing bodies. So it's part of a movement across the sporting landscape to really be more active and more intentional about EDI and how we approach it. And we need to make sure that our EDI impact is based around actions rather than just broad strategic statements. So that's important. And if you just move on to strategic directions now, we've been working with our people, place and community strategy for 18 months. And I think it's proving to be a refreshing approach to the way that we support our sport for everyone. Try to think beyond just the funding structures and focus more on the delivery and the relevance of the sport for the benefit of individuals and the communities that they serve. Over the next year, we'll be looking at what comes after people, places and communities, whether it's a full refresh or a retune, but that will be some work we'll undertake next year. And as Stu mentioned, we've also had the launch of the new RYA Together on Water strategy. Fortunately, the tone, the priorities and the intention of the two strategies sit very well together. I think actually RYA Hamble might have stolen quite a lot of our good ideas from our own strategy and rolled it into Together on Water. So there's a very good fit there. But the aim of Together on Water really is to welcome more people into our sport, to make them feel valued and supported, and as Brian alluded to earlier, to make them feel safe within the sporting environment. And I hope you as members also consider Together on Water as a very positive step forward for the RYA, and that you can help us use that message within Together on Water to help grow the RYA membership. And I'll finish off talking about people. So when I was interviewed for this role back in January of this year, I made it clear that one of my key motivations for considering the role and applying for it, and a personal priority of mine, was the really excellent team at RYA Scotland. I had a touch point with the team as Open Sailing for Commodore, where we had a supported club session, and Robin Nichol was particularly engaged with the club and helped move us forward a lot. So I was really motivated to apply for the role because of the excellence across the team. And when I started in May, there were quite a number of staffing gaps that we were experiencing, but we've made some excellent appointments over the last few months, and I can confirm at this point that we actually confirmed our last appointment yesterday, and so we'll have a full staff team going into the new year, which is a really tremendous position to be in. But what I hadn't actually appreciated when I was interviewed, and I don't know why I had this oversight, but I hadn't appreciated the huge contribution that are made by the volunteers and our coaching community. That was a blind spot for me. They're absolutely key to the delivery of our strategy. And this is the right opportunity to thank you all for the interest you take in RYA Scotland and for the contributions you make on behalf of our community, our boating community. As many people on this call have already said, there'll be many contributions, many opportunities, for being able to contribute further to the work that we're doing, either in voluntary roles or just being a great advocate of the RYA, and thereby encouraging others to join the sport or to join the RYA. And I'll just finish off very simply with a thanks for the very warm welcome and tremendous support that I've received personally from everyone who's connected with the RYA and RYA Scotland. Be that the staff members, the board members, committee members, volunteers, people I've met when I've been out and about during the summer. It's just been a tremendous start for a new role, a completely new change for me. It was a bold move for me and the family, and it's been hugely positive. And as I started off, I just can't believe I get to lead this organisation. It's absolutely fantastic. So thanks to everybody, and I'm looking forward to the next year very much.
Okay, thanks, Finlo, and thanks to all of the presenters. I hope that gives members a strong sense of the work and dedication that the team put in over the last year and what's been going on. It's so when you listen to it, as Finlo says, it's impressive, and that's quite probably an understatement. So I'm going to move on. We've got any other competent business on the application or signing up process for this AGM. We offered opportunities for people to submit questions in advance. So my plan is to go through the questions that we've had submitted, and thank you to everyone who's submitted questions. And then after these questions are out the way, I will open the floor and we'll take questions from anyone who's present in the meeting. But let's start with the submitted questions. I'm going to start with a question from Nick Goodchild. Nick's asking about wing foiling is the new water sport on the scene. It's good to see the RYA are embracing it so far, but no doubt will become an Olympic sport in the future. What plans does RYA Scotland have to support junior and youth development in the growing wing foiling sport in anticipation of it becoming an Olympic sport in the future? And so Hamish is going to take this question. So Hamish, thank you.
Yeah, well, Brian, I don't know if Nick's on the call, but so it isn't an Olympic discipline yet. It may be. Would be the point. There's a lot of chatter around, you know, as the classes change throughout the different game cycles, and we will really just, as with any discipline, we would follow RYA's lead and you know, adopt the support that we can with the limited resources that we have to the different classes. We have found that you know, each specialism isn't necessarily a barrier. We see a lot of conversion between windsurfers and some of the other disciplines, kite foiling in particular. So you know, I think for the sailors that are involved in the foiling, it's still very, very recreational. There isn't a true defined performance path. It was included in our recent fin and foil event at Stranraer, but you know, when we see it evolving, then we would make a decision on how we can support it with the resources that we've got available, Brian.
Okay, thanks for that. I think if I'm correct, Nick was part of the team at delivering fin and foil. So we did have, as you say, wing foiling. So we'll keep an eye on that. So I appreciate that. Hope that answers your question, Nick. So next question is from Neil Marshall. So Neil was asking about funding to help war disabled pensioners such as himself to gain qualifications and also support at club level. I did just quickly check with Neil in advance what particular qualifications, because I think there are slightly nuanced answers depending on that. I'll start with perhaps the not so good news, which is the particular qualifications Neil's interested in is not something that we have funding available for. What I want to do is use this question, if you'll permit me, Neil, just to talk about the general approach to funding. Our overall approach is about providing support from within our staff resources. The staff and the expertise within the staff team is the key thing that we have to offer. So as an example, support at the club level is definitely something that we can do. A good example perhaps maybe would be if the sailing clubs, I believe it's Plockton, is interested in becoming a sailability centre, then that's something the development team would help with, and they would also help you identify and work with other funding bodies to see what could be done. So I'm afraid it's in the specific question, Neil, not the best answer, but overall, hopefully you can see how we, RYA Scotland, support the clubs and other organisations. Okay, moving on. I've got a question now from a number of questions actually from Derek Greer. So thanks as always, Derek. I like to be kept honest. First question is, what factors contribute to the limited availability of RYA instructors and assessors in Scotland? And it has been mentioned by one of the other presenters this evening, and it's an interesting question because I think at least one of the factors did come up in the Home Countries Conference that I referenced earlier on today, where we had a session on data, and this is the sort of difference between someone who has the ticket, the qualification, on those who are active with that ticket and qualifications. So what are you doing with that? And that's a piece of data that we don't really have an insight. So while we know the overall numbers, we don't really have a clear insight into how active some of those folks are. So that's a data gap that we're RYA is going to look to see if they can address coming forward. I think also when we look at instructors, there is the issue of lapsed instructors. So this was something that certainly was a hot topic. So the total factors are people who were instructors who they've let that lapse, or particularly I think through COVID we had some challenges there. Again, this is something that was brought up not only from Scotland but from a number of other areas within the RYA family, and I'm pleased to report that training have re-evaluated the criteria by which you can revalidate an expired instructor qualification, and now actually it's quite a reasonable time period window that is available, and the process isn't really too onerous either. So a little bit of work there to try and help increase the numbers and look at this data, and I hope that maybe there are a couple of the factors from our perspective that can contribute to the limited availability of instructors and assessors in Scotland. The second question is, what measures are in place to ensure commercial centres have proper representation and allocation of time and staff resources at board level within both at board level and within RYA Scotland? It's been mentioned a couple of times, and I did talk about it in Matters Arising, so I think Derek is with us. So Derek, hopefully that addresses the question, and we continue to make progress that I know you've been definitely keeping me honest on, which is absolutely fine. And we'll see where we are. I think once the coaching collective is up and running, that would be the structure that would be in place to manage that particular question. Also asked the question on how can RYA Scotland establish a more efficient and inclusive communication channel that emphasises equal opportunities for all, rather than relying on personal connections and knowing the right people. So it's communications questions. I'm going to hand this back to Stuart. Stu?
Hi, Derek, and thanks for the question. I'm going to give you an answer in 3 parts, I'm afraid, so bear with me. Firstly, I think this is more about using our existing channels better rather than creating a new one. So one example of that is the RYA website, which has so far reduced the number of RYA and RYA Scotland channels greatly. Website development is an ongoing process, and not just for the RYA, for everyone. But the RYA are currently working to improve their site. We at RYA Scotland have got to ensure that we make the most of that platform, and part of Mark Turner's involvement in these monthly digital meetings are to do that. Second part, bear with me, is with a new communications and engagement officer, we're going to have way more capacity in terms of communications. And part of that is to ensure that we are talking to people and to the right people, but also that they can find their place within communities and RYA spaces. So we're much more visible already, and I think with an extra person in person, we just need more of this. And then finally, third part is we need to hear from more people like you, as well as from people that we've never heard from before. And a frequent saying of mine is we don't know what we don't know. So we're currently working on that. In order to receive the widest possible feedback on all of our communications, we'll be asking the community how and where we can improve. And as that's ongoing, I can't say much more right now, but I hear you and we are on it. Back to you, Brian.
Okay, thank you, sir. And last question I have again from Derek. Specific actions RYA Scotland has taken to address the MAIB investigations that have been released, highlighting incidents involving RYA instructors that could have resulted in much more serious consequences. So Jack's going to respond to this question. So Jack, over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Firstly, I'd like to thank the question being asked, because what it does, it gives an opportunity to raise awareness of that situation and the subsequent MAIB report. So if you haven't seen it, I welcome you all, or encourage you all to go and Google it and find it and have a read, because there's some really great lessons to come out at the bottom of that. I'd like to check in on some of the actions and processes that the wider RYA department do as a bit of sharing of this. So all accidents and incidents that are reported, that they are looked at through the RYA training department in Hamble with support of legal and other current affairs department. The outcome of that is the RYA have a number of actions they can do. They can go and investigate themselves and look in at the club or training centre or that incident themselves. Or they can work, or they can and will and do work with the MIAB and subsequent MCA, depending on what the situation is, in reviewing that and finding the actions from it. And some of the sort of evidence of this shows that Rachel Andrews, powerboat chief instructor, she works closely with the MCA and MIAB, and she's part of one of the recent safety bulletins, and you can see some of her work and details through that. So there's a really good connection there. So that's really important to highlight. The other sort of key things that happens and can work are the RYA training guidance notices, and one of the actions from that incident is that there's a published training guidance notice out, and if you're a training centre or club, hopefully that communications are getting through, but if you don't have them or you want to view them, they are on our website on the training support site. You may need a login, but clubs, instructors, etc. all have the access or ability to have access to a login, and those guidance notices are up there and really quite effective and useful. If you don't know about them, please share that link, because they are really quite key information communication networks, just following the question on communication. The other parts then are RYA training centre inspections. They are the connection point from a training perspective, and the centre inspector. If you've had an accident in your centre, the inspector will be asked to go and look at that, or a near miss, we can ask to look at that. I can talk experience of that as an inspector. I've been asked a number of times with some specific information from the RYA training to go and ask, discuss, talk about, and review those accidents or near misses at that particular training centre. So that's a connection point that is really important to highlight. And then of the CPD and engagement days that the RYA does. So that's kind of the process, or the backroom, I suppose, elements that can happen from these instances or near misses. But we come to the specific nature that RYA Scotland can do, which is in your question. And firstly is through the inspector update. That's kind of a learning point and a learning check-in point that Robin, or the two Robins in the team, have no doubt, or have already spoken about it, and no doubt made a plan to add that into their training inspector update as we move into the sort of winter program. There's a powerboat CPD already kind of in process, and again, these instances and situations feed that CPD program, but also feed the discussions and topics about that are most important and relevant. So that's important to note. Trainer update, similar thing to inspector update, and then the final part is around RYA Scotland communications. We can promote this. I view the MIAB reports as positive, because they are learning accounts. They are non-blame learning reports to increase the safety in our maritime space. So, and we can do work around this. So to answer the question, specific parts are those 4 bits at the end that RYA Scotland can do. And the most important thing to share with you around that is us as RYA Scotland are, kind of standby to support the RYA training team on those investigations, learning, development, where needed, as they take the lead. So, Derek, hopefully that answers your question. But thank you for raising it, because it gives us the opportunity to promote that as a learning account.
Okay, thanks, Jack. And Derek, your name is on the list. I don't know if you're there, but if you want to.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for that. There's quite an awful lot to unpack from what we've just heard, and I thank you both for that and for answering questions quite coherently. Something you said, Brian, which slightly concerns me, is what you said about instructors and their tickets being possibly extended. You weren't very clear on what the RYA were thinking with regards to how that process is going to work. I have some great concerns that CPD is, because CPD is not compulsory, and that we essentially attend the training voluntarily. That we have some instructors out there who are very out of touch, and these incidents that are, I'm not going to say common, but are happening, and we've basically got instructors out there that are now inexperienced, extending these people's tickets to allow them to gain more time in the water. And I don't want to harp on about the COVID gap that we had in the training. I realise that does contribute to this issue that we're in. So can you explain a little bit more about what the thoughts are from RYA?
Yeah, so there's significant pressure on instructors and particularly senior instructors. And this is specifically instructor revalidation. So quick reminder for everybody, if you are an instructor, you're required to revalidate every 5 years. You must produce evidence of the teaching activity that you've undertaken. If you don't revalidate within your 5-year window, effectively your qualification is null and void. The change here is that there is a path now for a number of years afterwards. I think there's more information available on the RYA site on instructors for revalidation, but effectively they're allowing a greater window for you to come back and say, I had my qualification, it expired 9 months ago. It's an oversight on my part. I'd like to continue. There's a path to coming back on board, and most of the paths to come back on board are about having your teaching observed. So one of the other points I make in this general space is that the RYA's approach here is a lot of emphasis on the senior instructor or principal of training centres for maintaining the standards. So the standards are maintained by the SI, the principal, and that's why the SI principals are requested to oversee and witness the training taking place within these sectors. And they're the control, the final control that Jack's touched on is inspections, where an RYA inspector will come and also look to witness the activity and see the activity being delivered. I think the final thing I would just say is that the RYA's high-level approach is try not to be too mandatory or prescriptive, and that we view the path to skill through education rather than legislation. And so if that's our public persona, so that's us basically saying that folks can go boating, we don't need a mandatory licensing scheme, and that's been the RYA position for some time. I think when we reflect internally, we should follow that and do follow that same process. So I'm not personally not concerned. I think there's enough checks and balances. What I was concerned about, and not just myself, but members and clubs in Scotland as well as up and down the United Kingdom, were unable to provide activity because they couldn't get qualified people when they had people that are just lapsed. So I'm hoping that clarifies my comments sufficiently.
It doesn't, but I'm not going to get into a big discussion about it. I realise there's other business tonight. But thanks here for that. I'll respond, I think, in writing to you on this. There's definitely further discussion to be had in this, and we'll take it forward from there. Thank you for answering the questions tonight. Much appreciated.
Yeah, listen, thanks for asking. Thanks for asking. All right, folks, we are under AOCB. Are there any other questions from members? If you want to just unmute yourself, introduce your name, please, and club if appropriate, and ask your question, and myself and the broader team will do our best to answer them. If for any reason you manage to stump us, we will get back to you with an answer, but a reasonable amount of knowledge on the call. So any questions from attendees this evening? No. Okay, great. Well, then I think we can bring the meeting to a close. Again, my thanks and the team's thanks for your time this evening. I hope you've felt it was time well spent and you leave a little bit wiser than when you arrived. It certainly continues to be my privilege and honour to serve as chair of this organisation, and I look forward to, as I'm sure all the board members, staff and others do, seeing you out on the water sometime in the next year. Until the next AGM, thank you very much.
Thank you to the chair.
You're very welcome, and thank you, Charlie, for stepping in there. Appreciate it again.
And thanks to Pauline as well for all the support over the year.
Here, here. Are we left back with the internals then? I think we're just about there.
No. There's
Yep.
still one. There's still one.
Oh.
I think Pauline is there.
I don't see anyone that's not.
Yeah, there's one.
Oh, look, I'm going to say it's not a secret anyway. Listen, everybody, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Solid run through and a very compelling meeting. I'm going to follow up with Derek and have a chat with him. It's probably overdue, but everybody else, thank you very much for your time, and I will see you all soon if I don't talk to you then. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks for all the
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Well
done. Thanks, everyone.
Pauline and Naz. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, bye-bye.
Brian,
Hi, everyone.
got 10 seconds.
Yep.